Hello everybody, it is Thursday, the 18th of November. I want to bring some rationality into this entire subject, because as this world is going insane around us, rationality is actually the only way forward. And as I'm talking about these things, and for a few days now, it is actually straightforward. You know, it seems extremely complicated, but there is a truth in there that is actually straightforward. And that is a truth that needs to be known. And the straightforward truth is this. When we talk, about the materialistic, about the material world, the knowledge of it, modern science, that is a knowledge derived by and through the use of the intellect, where we look at the material and we start measuring, weighing it, and we create equations, about how these forces work in physics and the interactions that we know in biology and in chemistry. But it is the knowledge of the derived through the knowledge of the material. Although in quantum physics now, we're going, because we have created machines that can make the invisible visible, can measure and weigh and see the invisible. So modern science is now going into the realm of the invisible to the eye. So that is one way by which we derive knowledge of ourselves and of the world around us. Now, what is now described as spiritual knowledge, or the esoteric teachings, they are also gathering knowledge about the same thing, about us and the world around us. But they're not going the way of the intellect. They are going by intuitive knowledge, through the knowledge of the forces, through feeling. And then they also gain knowledge of our energy and the energies around us. The problem is, especially with the esoteric teachings, and why we find them so hard to understand, is that as we are in the physical, we are interpreting energies which create pictures, which is the reality that we perceive. The problem with the other way is that it's also creating pictures. So if you are in meditation, or whatever it is you're doing, and you're perceiving you're perceiving energies, again, your own, and the interaction with other energies around you, and that again creates pictures. And we come to angels and demons, and whatever cultural thinking you are in is a picture that it will produce. And then the interpretation of those pictures might be problematic. And again, if you're doing this and you are just staying in the picture book without going any further, then you live in a world of demons, which is not what it is, just energies and the interaction of energies. But there you have the division. There you have the division between the two sciences, so to speak. It is simply the way by which they derive knowledge. And that actually takes the boogeyman out of that. It is our nature. It is the way by which we perceive ourselves in reality, and we don't just go by the intellect. Even if we think we do, we don't. Now, but what is actually creating the insanity in this world is, well, first of all, of course, staying in the picture book and not going any further. And the boogeyman is all around. But the real problem is that there were people way back and now that understand this. Yeah, they're not running scared of angels and demons. They do understand this. And the knowledge, especially what is now the esoteric teaching, so the spiritual knowledge, was made occult. It was hidden. It was hidden from the masses. Now, and I would say the main reason for that, well, there's two reasons for that, but the main reason is the perception of the people themselves of being elevated, especially if they interpreted what they got as there being forces outside of themselves that they must serve. And then seeing themselves as elevated over the rest, and that knowledge would give them power over the rest. So that is the I am that wants to rule over. The knowledge was also suppressed by the other side, that is the materialistic side. Because people being of that knowledge cannot be suppressed by materialistic ways, because they can influence reality on a completely different level. So it was a threat to them as well. And you can see that in the coming together at the creation of Christianity, of the Jewish priests and Rome. Now, this knowledge, which was a new level of knowledge derived through emotional knowledge, intuitive knowledge, and that knowledge was a threat to both of them. It was a threat to the Jewish priests, because they were ruling through their level of knowledge, and to have a higher level of knowledge amongst the people really didn't work for them. And it didn't work for Rome, who was ruling in the materialistic world, in the material world. So there was a coming together of the material and the esoteric. They were both threatened at the time, and I'm sure they were not easy bedfellows at the time. And they created between them a distortion of that knowledge that should then be given to the masses. So they could no longer work this teaching. And that is Christianity. But that was a major incident at which time that was worked. I would say it was worked in small pieces all the time. Yeah? Where people that gained the knowledge then used the knowledge to serve the I am, I want to rule over, and really did the same thing. You know, keep the real knowledge to yourself and teach a slight distortion to everybody else, which then gives you an advantage. The problem is, as I believe that was done in many incidences all through time, the people that created the distortion, that had the knowledge that it was a distortion, yeah, they died, they went away, and the rest was left working the distortions, thinking it was truth. And then over a time it became truth, because it was the only knowledge that was there. Because the distortion kind of disappeared with the people that had created it. And that is the problem, that when we are looking back now at the old texts and taking it for truth, we should be very, very careful. Because we could be looking at a deliberately created distortion that served one interest or another at that time. So we cannot take for granted that what is written in those texts is actually pure knowledge. Now the way forward. Out of an understanding that this is just basically the knowledge of our nature, the way by which we derive art knowledge, and that those two are intertwined in us, and even if we think we're going the rational way, the other is still involved even if we don't know it. It always is. So that takes the boogeyman out of that. Now, as I said, the distortions were created by the I ams that wanted to rule over, and that hid the true knowledge, made it occult, made the masses afraid of it. But as the masses are creating according to the distortion, whether that be in the physical, we're creating societies on the basis of things that are a distortion of what reality actually is, what we actually are. So either we do that in the physical or through our prayers. Because our prayers do work something. And if we pray out of the wrong perception of what we should actually be doing, we are actually creating, on a spiritual level, the wrong thing. And this is what has created this world. And it is a complete and utter mess. And there is really love your neighbor as yourself. Know that you are connected to everything else, because I think the one thing that never got into the heads of the elites, where they thought themselves further and further elevated through that knowledge, through the workings of that knowledge, and creating more and more chaos around them, more and more imbalance around them. Imbalance between people themselves, imbalance between people and nature, and that the only way they can hold their own elevated status is by having to protect themselves from the imbalance that they have created. So basically, they have to build higher and higher walls to crawl in behind, to protect themselves from the rest, and they're actually creating their own prison. I think they're kind of sitting in a prison thinking they are the ones that are free. I'm sure it is pretty inside those prisons. I'm sure it is, but it is still a prison. So, that is, they are putting themselves into bubbles, and the bubbles become smaller and smaller and smaller. And they're thinking they're great. So way forward, first of all, we must take the boogeyman out of this. We're not talking about angels and demons and God knows what. We're talking about energies and our knowledge of energies, our knowledge of ourselves, of the world around us. We derive that knowledge by two different ways, and that is now divided into modern science, the way of the intellect, and spiritual knowledge, the way that derives its knowledge from within. Now there are people already that are putting those two together, which is the way. This tree of knowledge is not a tree of choice. It's not choose one side or the other. Although as people, as individuals, we are probably, maybe, some of us more prone to derive knowledge the one way or the other. It's the way that we are balanced ourselves. So we might lean more to one way or the other. But then we give of that knowledge And then the knowledge that has been found needs to be put together. And that is what a lot of people are doing now. They're taking modern science and they're putting it together with the esoteric texts. And they find that in many ways the two are talking about the same thing. And working those two branches by bringing them together in the way of a dialectic, by trying to bring the two together and creating something that is bigger, a bigger knowledge than either part can provide. And that is the correct way. And then don't hide it again, but make it work for all and bring it to the awareness of all, so that the entire world in balance can benefit from this. That is not the way forward at all, is technology, which is again us creating forms out of a knowledge of nature, out of a knowledge of forces, and we're working that on creating machines. And that is the wrong way completely. Because I believe Greg Braden is completely right when he says the more we rely on this technology, the more we forget the truth of where this knowledge is actually coming from. And we can use that knowledge by ourselves. We don't need any outside aids to do it. So technology, there's, at the moment it looks like three ways: technology, spiritual knowledge, and the materialistic knowledge. Now the ones that are derived out of us are the material knowledge and the spiritual knowledge, and those two need to come together and forget technology. Use it as little as possible and try the other way. And then this is the last thing, and as my title says, the Bible, the two Baals, which means the two masters, the two ways of deriving at knowledge. And they are not to rule over us. They are there to serve us. They are our servants. We are the masters. And good and evil is not in the knowledge, but in what you do with it. And that is what is created, this great evil that is in this world now. It was not the knowledge, but the way they used it. And it was mainly to serve the self, to elevate the self, to rule over the rest. Anyway, I leave it at that, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.